They told me not to come. Not in so many words, but when your own siblings plan your father's funeral without telling you the date, it says enough. I found out through a Facebook post. A photo. The whole family, my brothers, their wives, even cousins I haven't spoken to in years, standing around my father's casket. And me, sitting in my apartment in Phoenix, wondering if the man who once carried me on his shoulders even remembered me in his final days. My phone never rang. My inbox was empty. And when I messaged my older brother, Matthew, he replied with 5 words. You always did your own thing. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just silence. It was in that moment, staring at that post, heart cracking open in my chest, I realized something. They'd erased me from the story long ago. Pause. Have you ever felt like your own blood forgot you existed? Comment still standing if you've ever been the black sheep of your family. You ever try to remember something soft in a house that always felt cold? That was my childhood. We lived in a modest 2-story home in Cincinnati. Brick walls, creaky stairs, the smell of my mom's pot roast on Sundays. On the surface, it all looked like a picture-perfect American family. But I was never the center of that picture. My father, Robert Hargrove, everyone called him Bob, was a military man. Clean-cut, disciplined, tough. He believed in order, respect, and earning your place. Problem was, I didn't fit his mold. My older brothers did. Matthew, the golden child. He could do no wrong. Class president, football captain, straight-A student. My dad used to sit in the stands, chest puffed out, yelling, "That's my boy." Then there was Brian, the quiet achiever. Smart, dependable, joined Dad's real estate company right after college. Dad trusted him with everything. And me? I was the third-born mistake no one planned for. I liked sketching. I wrote stories. I talked back sometimes. I cried easily. I was sensitive. And in my house, sensitive was just a polite way of saying weak. I still remember this one night. I was 10 years old. I had spent weeks building this diorama of the solar system for school. Papier-mâché planets, painted by hand, even made Saturn's rings from old coat hangers. I brought it downstairs, beaming, just as Dad walked in the door from work. "Dad, look what I made." He glanced over, still holding his briefcase, and said, "That from art class? Or do you actually learn anything useful in school?" I laughed awkwardly, thinking he was joking. But he wasn't. He just walked past me to the living room and turned on the news. My mother, Elaine, tried to make things fair. She was softer, quieter, a churchwoman, always lighting candles and whispering prayers. She'd sneak me extra cookies, kiss my forehead at night, and once told me, "You feel everything, James. That's not a flaw, that's your gift." But even she didn't stand up to Dad. I think she was afraid to. And so, I grew up chasing crumbs. Crumbs of attention. Crumbs of praise. Crumbs of love. Matthew. I got accepted into Notre Dame. Dad. Stands and claps. That's my boy. I knew it. You're going places, Matt. Brian. I'm gonna work full-time with Dad this summer. Dad. Good. You're reliable. I like that. Me. I won first place in the poetry contest today. Silence. Dad. Not even looking up for mistake. We're raising men, not poets. I tried. God, I tried. I joined the debate team. Didn't matter. I played JV basketball. He never came to a single game. I got a scholarship to a small liberal arts college out west. He told everyone I ran away to draw pictures. But what hurt the most was that he never once said he was proud of me. When I was 24, I moved to Phoenix. I thought distance would help. I found my people, artists, writers, musicians. I worked as a storyboard artist in advertising, freelanced comic books on the side. I wasn't rich, but I was finally breathing. And yet every Christmas, I still flew home. Still hoping, maybe this year, I'd be seen. I'd bring gifts. Help Mom cook. Ask Dad questions about work. And every year, it was the same. Matthew brought that big ham, remember? He always thinks of everything. Brian fixed the roof last spring. Saved us a ton. And James? Well, he's still out there drawing, right? Like I was some lost satellite floating just outside the orbit of their world. But I clung to one thing. My dad might not love me loud, but maybe in his own quiet way, he was proud. I thought maybe he'd leave me something in his will, a gesture, a letter, even a token. Just something that said, I saw you. I knew you were mine. And I was proud. I didn't know then that everything he left behind would unravel the truth. Not just about him, but about me. Looking back now, the signs were always there. Not flashing neon warnings, just little things. Small wounds that never bled, but never healed either. I was 25 the first time I noticed something was really off. It was Thanksgiving. I had flown in from Phoenix, 2 layovers, a red-eye flight. Arrived with a pie I'd made myself. Bourbon pecan, a recipe I was proud of. As soon as I walked in, the air felt tight. Matthew was already there, wearing one of Dad's old sweaters, carving the turkey like he was auditioning to be the next head of the family. Brian was setting the table, joking with Dad about mortgage rates. And Mom? She looked stressed. Eyes darting. Smile too tight. Me. Hey, everything okay? She glanced toward the kitchen where Dad was. Then back at me. Softly, he thought maybe this year you'd stay in Phoenix. I blinked. Me. What? Why? She looked down at the pie in my hands and whispered. He said you don't really fit in here anymore. That night, I sat at the table like a guest in my own house. No one asked about my job. No one commented on the pie. Dad raised a toast to family and didn't look at me once. A few months later, it got worse. Brian and Matthew started holding family meetings at the house. About Dad's company. About the estate. About long-term planning. They never told me about them. I only found out because Aunt Carol slipped up. Aunt Carol. So, what did you think of the new lake house plan? Me. What lake house plan? She paused, lips pressed tight. Aunt Carol. Oh, I thought Robert said he told all the boys. He hadn't. Turns out, Dad was planning to build a retirement property by the lake, and he was putting it in Brian's name. Not the kids. Just Brian. I called Matthew that night. Me. Why didn't anyone tell me? Matthew. Because you're not involved, James. Me. I'm his son, too. Matthew. You made your choice when you moved across the country to draw cartoons. They always use that line. Like my life was a phase. A joke. Then came the will updates. I was visiting one summer, walking past Dad's office, when I heard voices inside. Dad. His lawyer. Brian. Dad. Make sure the shares stay between the boys who stayed. Lawyer. And James? Dad. Long pause. Leave him the books. The library upstairs. He always liked those. I remember standing in that hallway frozen. My father had reduced me to a bookshelf. It was around that time I started pulling back. Stopped coming for minor holidays. Stopped calling so often. And that just made them colder. A year before he passed, I came home for Christmas. My mother had begged me, said she missed me. So I did. I came. I arrived with a custom-framed sketch I'd drawn of our family home. Every detail, the snow-covered roof, the crooked mailbox, even the crack in the driveway from when Brian crashed Mom's car. I wrapped it carefully, placed it under the tree. Christmas morning came. Everyone opened gifts. Laughed. Hugged. No one even noticed mine. It sat unopened until evening. Finally, I placed it in Dad's hands. Me. I drew this. It's for you. He unwrapped it slowly, looked at it, then said, Dad, looks like you had too much time on your hands out there. And handed it to Brian. Dad, you always liked this old house more than I did. You keep it. Brian smiled. Took it. Didn't say a word to me. That was the last Christmas I spent with them. The last time I stood in a room full of people who shared my DNA and felt completely invisible. I told myself it didn't matter, that I had my own life, my own worth, but inside I was breaking. Because deep down, every child wants to be seen. Every child wants to be chosen. It was a Friday morning in late September when I got the call. I was on set in Phoenix, reviewing storyboards with a client, when my phone buzzed. Mom's name. My heart dropped. I stepped outside. Me. Hey, Mom. But it wasn't her voice. It was Brian. Brian, flat, Dad's gone. Just like that. No build-up. No, we've been trying to reach you. Just 3 words, dropped like a stone down the well of my chest. Me shocked. What? When? What happened? Brian. Heart attack. Early this morning.
He was at the office.
They found him slumped over his desk. My legs went weak. I sat down on the curb. Me. Why didn't anyone tell me he wasn't doing well? I didn't even know he. Brian, interrupting, he didn't want you to worry. Anyway, funeral Sunday. Me. This Sunday? That's in 2 days. Brian. Yeah. That's how he wanted it.
Private.
Close family only. Me. I am close family. There was a pause. Brian, cold. You know what I mean. I flew out anyway. Last-minute ticket. Red eye again. No sleep. When I landed in Cincinnati, no one came to pick me up. I took a cab straight to the house. It was quiet when I arrived. Matthew answered the door, surprised. Matthew. You weren't supposed to be here. Me. He was my father. He didn't move.
Didn't let me in.
Me. You're seriously not letting me say goodbye. He looked down at his feet. Matthew. It's already done. I blinked. Me. What? Matthew. We had the service this morning. It was small. Me. You buried him without me? He didn't answer. Just stepped back inside and shut the door. I stood there on the porch of the home I grew up in, more unwelcome than a stranger. I got back in the cab, asked the driver to take me to Oakwood Cemetery. I walked the rows in the drizzle. No umbrella. Just my hands shaking from anger and disbelief. Finally, I found it. Fresh dirt. A temporary marker. Robert Hargrove, 1950 to 2023. No flowers. No sign that I'd ever existed in his world. I knelt down. Me, choked. You really left without me, huh? I sat there until the sun went down. The next morning, I showed up at the law office. I remembered the name, Stanley and Boyd, from that overheard conversation in the hallway years ago. I walked in, soaked from rain, no appointment. Receptionist. Sir, I'm sorry. Me. Tell Mr. Boyd James Hargrove is here. His client's son. Minutes later, I was sitting in a dark-paneled office across from a balding man with tired eyes. Mar Boyd. I wondered when you'd come. Me. Did he leave me anything? He opened a file folder. Mar Boyd. He left everything. To you. I stared at him. Me. What? He turned the file around so I could read it. M.R. Boyd. He updated his will 6 months ago. After his stroke, he left you the company, the properties, the assets, everything. My breath caught. Me. But he hated me. He barely spoke to me. R. Boyd. He said you were the only one who didn't ask for anything. The only one who lived on your own terms. I felt the room spin. M.R. Boyd, gently, he said he didn't know how to say it when he was alive. But he saw you. When I stepped out of that office, I wasn't just a son anymore. I was the owner of everything they thought was theirs. Word got out fast. That night, Brian called. Brian, furious, you manipulated him. Me. I didn't even know about the will. Brian, you don't deserve it. You were never part of this family. And maybe once, that would have crushed me.
But not now.
Me calm, he thought otherwise.
Click.
I walked into Dad's office the next day. Sat in the same chair he died in. I looked around at the shelves, the plaques, the thick smell of leather and paper. In the top drawer, I found a small, sealed envelope. My name written in his sharp, blocky script. My hands trembled as I opened it. James. I didn't know how to love you the way you needed. But I always respected you. You lived with integrity. You didn't bend to make others comfortable. That's something I never had the courage to do. I'm sorry I never said it. I hope this makes up for a small part of what I never gave you. Dad. I cried then, not for what I'd lost, but for the boy I used to be, the one who begged for crumbs of love, and got the whole damn house instead. 2 weeks later, I called a family meeting. Not a suggestion, a directive. I sent formal emails, hired a corporate assistant to follow up. Because I wasn't just James, the artsy afterthought anymore. I was James Hargrove, legal owner of Hargrove Realty Group, LLC. We met in the main boardroom at the downtown office. The same one where Dad held annual shareholder meetings. The same one I was never invited to. They all came. Matthew, Brian, their wives. Even Aunt Carol and Uncle George. Not out of respect, out of curiosity and fear. I stood at the head of the table, wearing a charcoal suit. Not flashy, just clean. The same tie Dad wore in his 50th anniversary photo. They didn't say a word at first, until Matthew broke the silence. Matthew, tight-lipped, so what is this, James? A victory lap. Me, calm, this is clarity. For all of us. Brian scoffed. Brian, this company has never been yours. You don't know anything about it. You haven't worked a day in real estate. Me, neither did Dad when he started. He built it, and I'll rebuild it. Brian, he left you everything out of guilt, not because you earned it. Me, steady, I didn't come here to justify a man's final wishes. I came to tell you the new terms. I pulled out the documents and laid them flat. Me, I'm not kicking anyone out. Not yet. You'll keep your jobs if you want them. But things are changing. They stared at me like I was speaking another language. Matthew, this is a joke. Me, you called me a mistake, an outsider. For years. He flinched. Me, firm. You buried our father without telling me. You sent group messages I was never added to. You held meetings, made plans, passed judgment, and you erased me. Over and over again. Brian, you distanced yourself. Me, because you made it unbearable to stay. I pulled out a copy of the handwritten letter from Dad, slid it across the table. Me, he saw me. You didn't. And now, legally, emotionally, spiritually, I'm the one sitting at the head of this table. They read the letter in silence. For once, they couldn't say a thing. That night, I visited Mom. She lived alone now. The house felt smaller without Dad's voice echoing through it. She opened the door slowly, eyes tired, mascara faded. James. Me? I'm not here to fight.
She let me in.
We sat in the same kitchen where she used to pack lunches and read devotionals. Me, softly, did you know? She didn't pretend. Quiet, he called me after the stroke. Told me he was changing the will. Me, why didn't you say anything? She wiped a tear from her cheek. Because I was afraid they'd blame me. And I knew they'd never forgive you. Me, they don't have to. I reached into my coat pocket, handed her a second copy of the letter. She read it slowly, lips trembling. Whisper, he really wrote this? Me, with his own hand. We sat in silence. Then she looked up. He loved you, James. He just didn't know how to love you right. I nodded. Me, I know. The next week, I did something symbolic. I took Dad's photo off the wall in the company hallway, the one where he stood with Matthew and Brian, arms over their shoulders. I replaced it with a family portrait I commissioned. It showed the house, the street, and 3 boys, all of them as children, standing on the lawn. Only this time, I was at the center. I didn't erase anyone. I didn't fire anyone. I didn't need revenge. I just needed the truth to stand, where for so long it had been buried. The days that followed weren't filled with victory. They were filled with silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that hums in your ears and makes you question everything. The kind that echoes in empty hallways, even when people are around. Matthew and Brian stopped speaking to me. Completely. I didn't get angry voicemails or hate mail. I got worse. Absence. They removed me from the family group chat. Didn't invite me to Brian's daughter's birthday party. Didn't call on Thanksgiving. The only person who checked in?
Mom.
She made tea like she always did. Earl Grey, with too much sugar. We sat across from each other at the table. Mom, Matthew came by yesterday. Me. Did he mention me? She paused, looking down at her mug. Mom, he said you've changed. Me, softly, I haven't. I just stopped hiding. She reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. I'm proud of you, even if they're not ready to be. That meant more to me than I expected. For years, I chased that sentence like a ghost. To finally hear it, not from Dad, but from her, stitched something back together inside me. But it didn't erase the ache. Sometimes I still walked into the office and waited for Dad's sarcastic voice. You're late, Picasso. But it never came. Grief is strange. You can grieve someone and also grieve the fantasy you built around them. For most of my life, I believed that one day, Dad would turn to me and say, I see you. And while the letter helped, it didn't erase the years of feeling like wallpaper in my own home. One night, I was in the attic, sorting through old boxes, cleaning out what was left of Dad's private storage. I found an old VHS tape. It was labeled, Home, 93. I didn't even remember us having a camcorder. I dusted off an old player, popped it in. The screen crackled, then cleared. We were at a 4th of July picnic. I was maybe 5. Brian was tossing a football with Dad. Matthew was helping Mom with a cooler. And there I was, off to the side, crouched in the grass, collecting fireflies in a jar. Suddenly, the camera turned toward me. Dad's voice. Dad. Off camera, what are you doing there, buddy? 5-year-old, me looked up, grinning. Young Emmy. I'm catching stars. He laughed. Not a mocking laugh. A warm, surprised kind of laugh. Dad. Well, I'll be. You keep those safe. World could use more stars. Then the camera turned away. That was it. Just a moment. But it broke me open. Because in that tiny flicker of time, he saw me. Not as the weird kid. Not as the outsider. As his son. That night, I lit a candle, wrote in my journal, and cried in a way I hadn't since I was 12. Not because I was angry, but because I was healing. I looked around at the team, new hires, fresh interns, the people I brought in after restructuring. We weren't just flipping properties anymore. We were launching a new program, affordable housing scholarships for artists, writers, and underfunded creatives. Because I remembered what it felt like to not be chosen. And now I could choose others. People started talking. The ones who had ignored me, family friends, uncles, old high school acquaintances, suddenly reached out. Uncle George, text, I always told your dad you were special. Glad he finally got it. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry. Because I didn't need it anymore. Even Aunt Carol sent a long email. Aunt Carol, email. I'm sorry we didn't see you. We failed you. And I hope someday, when the dust settles, we can be more than relatives. We can be family. I read it twice. Then marked it unread. Not out of pettiness, but preservation. Because healing isn't about reopening every door. It's about choosing which ones you want to knock on again. In quieter moments, I still miss Dad. Not the version I grew up with. The version I hoped he could be. And maybe he became that version right at the very end. Maybe that's enough. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't happen with some grand epiphany or a dramatic turning point with orchestral music swelling in the background. It happens in whispers. Like the first time I woke up and didn't check my phone expecting another cold message from Matthew. Or when I passed Dad's old chair in the office and didn't feel my chest tighten. Or when I laughed, really laughed, and realized I wasn't faking it. The walls were lined with pieces from young, unknown artists. Some painted, some sculpted from scrap. One made portraits entirely out of salvaged mail. I stopped in front of one, a small pencil drawing of a little boy holding a jar full of fireflies. The artist? A 19-year-old college freshman named Raymond. He said he'd been kicked out at 16 for being too emotional. He'd lived in his car for a while. Applied for one of our scholarships after seeing our campaign online. I shook his hand. Me? You're talented. He smiled wide. Raymond. This drawing? It's the first one I ever sold. I nodded, throat tight. Me. Feels like something I would have drawn. That night, I stayed late at the gallery. Not because I had to.
Because I wanted to.
For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was performing someone else's version of who I should be. I was building my own. I started therapy, twice a week at first. Now once. My therapist, Karen, was blunt, gray-haired, and didn't let me hide behind humor. Karen, early session, you're not grieving your father. You're grieving the fantasy of the father you wanted. It hit me like a brick. But she was right. And once I stopped trying to force my grief into neat little boxes, I made room for real acceptance. I also started letting people in again. Old friends I'd ghosted when everything felt too heavy. Neighbors who waved from across the hall. Even Mom, slowly, steadily, one coffee at a time. We built new traditions. Sunday breakfasts. Tuesday phone calls. A shared recipe journal. No more pretending. Just presence. One night, she brought over a box of Dad's old notebooks. Most were ledgers and calculations, pages filled with numbers and measurements. But one stuffed in the bottom was different. It was filled with quotes, scribbled reflections, even rough sketches. On the first page, he'd written, "A man's worth is not measured by how loudly he leads, but by who he leads when no one's looking." It didn't sound like the man I knew, but maybe, toward the end, he was becoming him. I bought the property my father never got to build. Not as a monument, but as a start. It's quiet here. The kind of quiet that feels like an exhale. I host retreats now, small groups. Writers, artists, survivors. People healing from things they can't name yet. We don't just talk. We create. We plant things. We rest. And in that rest, something new always grows. Sometimes, late at night, I look out at the water and think of my younger self. The boy who built planets out of coat hangers. Who caught fireflies in jars and believed they were stars. He thought no one saw him.
But I do now.
And maybe that's the point. Healing doesn't mean everything is fixed. It just means I finally understand. I was never the forgotten son. I was the overlooked one, who never stopped looking back. And now, I'm exactly where I was meant to be. If you've stayed with me this long, thank you. I don't know your story. I don't know what rooms you've walked into and felt invisible, or whose name you whisper in your dreams, hoping one day they'll say, "I see you." But I do know this. You are not alone. I used to think I was cursed with a family that didn't know how to love me. That maybe I was too sensitive, too complicated, too much. But what I've learned slowly, painfully, is that not being chosen by your family doesn't mean you're unworthy. Sometimes the deepest betrayal is the silence. The way they look through you. The way your name never comes up in important conversations. The way they expect you to shrink, just to make room for their comfort. And yet, you still showed up. Didn't you? You showed up for birthdays. You sent the texts. You called first. You remembered anniversaries they forgot. You carried love, even when it wasn't returned. If no one's ever told you, that is sacred. People like us, the ones who've been sidelined, underestimated, edited out of the family photo. We grow strong in the shadows. We learn how to build homes out of rejection. We learn how to speak love fluently, even if it was never spoken to us. And when the time comes, we don't just take the seat we were denied. We rebuild the whole damn table. So let me ask you, have you ever been the forgotten one? The overlooked one? Have you ever spent your whole life waiting for a letter, a word, a glance that never came? And still, somehow, you loved anyway? If yes, you're not weak. You're miraculous. Family isn't blood. It's not who shares your last name. It's not who was in the house with you when you were 5. Family is who holds your story with care. Who doesn't flinch when you cry. Who sees you, not for what you do, but for who you are. And if you haven't found those people yet, keep going. You will. And when you do, let them love you loud. Let them celebrate you with cake and laughter and soft blankets on bad days. Let them write your name in permanent ink not pencil. Let them see all the parts of you, even the ones you thought you had to hide. If this story touched something in you, if you felt seen, drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me about the moment you decided to stop shrinking. Tell me who finally saw you, or who you had to walk away from to see yourself. And if no one's told you yet today, I'm proud of you, not for what you've accomplished, but for surviving in a world that wasn't built for softness, and still choosing love anyway. Like,
Subscribe. Stay.
not just for me, but for the you that's still healing. And remember, you were never forgotten. You were becoming.